Hey, Megan here. In my most recent History of Plants video, I covered the crazy history of one of the most stunning and often misunderstood plants out there, orchids. So today, we're diving into the practical side, talking about how to care for these incredible flowers. These beauties might seem intimidating, but with the right knowledge, you can absolutely get them to thrive and bloom in your home. We're going to cover everything from their fascinating origins to how to keep your own orchids happy and healthy. So where do these incredible plants come from? You might be surprised to learn that orchids are found on every continent except Antarctica. While they are widespread, the most diverse species really flourish in tropical regions around the globe. Now, their exact birthplace, for lack of a better phrase, has been a bit of a scientific debate. A recent study suggests that orchids likely originated in Eurasia during the Cretaceous period, somewhere between 66 and 100 million years ago. That's a long, long time ago. Interestingly, the study before this one actually pointed to Australia as their origin, showing just how much there is to still learn about these ancient plants. Many of the orchids you'll see, especially the popular ones, are epiphytes, which means they grow on trees in tropical forests, not as parasites, but like using the trees for support. As epiphytes, they absorb moisture and nutrients from the air and the rain. Other species are terrestrial, meaning they grow rooted in the soil, just like many of the other plants we're familiar with. This diversity in the natural habitat between species actually gives us clues for how to care for them at home. With over 25,000 known species and countless hybrids, the world of orchids is incredibly vast and varied. From tiny, almost microscopic flowers to blooms larger than your hand, their forms and colors are truly endless. And while we can't cover them all today, some of the most recognized genera include the elegant Phalaenopsis, often called the moth orchid, which is known for its long-lasting blooms. Cattleya, with its large, often fragrant, showy flowers. Dendrobium, a huge genus with incredibly diverse forms. And Cymbidium, which often boasts multiple blooms on a single stem and is popular for its hardiness. For those of us looking to bring the beauty of orchids indoors, certain species are much better suited to a typical home environment. The undeniable star of the show, and likely the one you see most often at grocery stores and garden centers, is the moth orchid. And they're popular for a reason. They are relatively forgiving and their blooms can last for months. Other great choices for houseplants include some cattleya, dendrobium, and oncidium varieties, all of which can adapt well to indoor conditions with the right care. Each has its own charm and slight care variations, but today we're focusing on the general principles, basically, that will help you succeed with most common indoor orchids. Now for the nitty-gritty. How do you actually keep these beauties alive and thriving? Let's break down the essential care requirements. Orchid temperature needs really depend on the specific species and its native environment. However, a good general guideline for most common houseplant orchids is to aim for 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and a cooler 55 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit at night. That 10 to 15 degree temperature drop between day and night is actually pretty important for many orchids because that triggers its flowering. For moth orchids specifically, they're a bit more tolerant, handling nights down to 60 degrees Fahrenheit and days up to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Most orchids absolutely love humidity, typically preferring levels between 40 to 60%. This is often higher than your average home, so you might need to give them a little boost. I don't have any epiphytic orchids, but I do have a jewel orchid, and you can see my guy lives in a terrarium, which apparently I'm only now seeing has a lot of fingerprints on it. And terrariums like that are a great way to maintain the humidity orchids need. Obviously, that is a small terrarium, so if you have a larger orchid, you might want a cloche or something like that. But another trick is to just cluster the plants together, as they'll release moisture through their leaves, which creates a microclimate. Just ensure that you have good air circulation to prevent fungal issues. Getting the light right is really crucial for orchids. They need bright and direct light. Think of the dappled light they'd get under a tree canopy in their natural habitats. East or west facing windows are often ideal because it gives them good light without harsh direct sun. If you're thinking of putting them near a south facing window, you'll likely need to use a sheer curtain or set the plant back to prevent the leaves from getting scorched. And unfortunately, north facing windows are usually too dim for most orchids. A great indicator of your orchid's light level is its leaf color. Dark green leaves often mean they're not getting enough light, while yellowing leaves can indicate too much sun. Essentially, you're aiming for a lovely medium to light green color. That's your sweet spot. If natural light isn't enough, many Many orchids also do well under artificial grow lights, needing at least 14 hours a day. Now, soil is where orchids differ significantly from many other houseplants. Many orchid species are epiphytic, meaning that they live on the trunks of trees instead of in the soil, so they do not like heavy, dense soil. Instead, they require a very well-draining potting mix that doesn't retain too much moisture. Think of what an epiphyte needs, something airy that allows their roots to breathe. Common mixes include fir bark, perlite, peat moss, and other loose organic materials. You can find excellent commercial orchid mixes readily available, and these are often the best choice, especially for beginners. You don't have to make your own blend. Most of them you can find at a local nursery or garden center. As an example, I got this orchid mix by Black Gold at my local version of a Tractor Supply. Also, many orchid enthusiasts have great success putting their orchids in a semi-hydroponic situation. This method often involves using inert media like leca balls instead of soil. The inert medium provides excellent aeration and wicking action for water. It can really be a fantastic way to ensure consistent moisture without the risk of root rot, especially for those who tend to overwater. It's a whole different rabbit hole to explore, and if you want me to cover that more in depth, leave a comment and let me know. But it's definitely an option if you're looking for an alternative to traditional potting mixes. Watering frequency is one of the most variable factors, depending on your orchid species, light, temperature, humidity, and even the potting mix you're using. The general rule is to water thoroughly when the potting mix is dry, allowing it to dry slightly between waterings. Do not leave them to sit in soggy conditions. You might have heard the advice to water your orchid with 2 or 3 ice cubes once a week. While this method is popularized by some commercial growers because it's very simplistic, and some short-term studies haven't shown immediate harm to Phalaenopsis orchids, it's generally not the most recommended practice for long-term orchid health. Tropical orchids thrive in warm, humid environments, and consistently exposing their roots to cold water can be a shock and potentially hinder their growth over time. More importantly, a few ice cubes often don't provide enough water to thoroughly flush the potting medium, which can lead to a buildup of salts and insufficient hydration for the entire root system. And this brings up a key difference in orchid types: water storage. Orchids like cattleya, dendrobium, cymbidium, and oncidium have pseudobulbs, those swollen bulb-like structures at the base of the plant. These pseudobulbs act as natural water storage organs, allowing these types of orchids to tolerate drier conditions between waterings than those without them. In contrast, moth orchids do not have pseudobulbs, so they rely on more consistent moisture from their leaves and roots and prefer not to dry out as much. If you're using a bark-based mix, a good method is to soak the entire pot in water for about 10 minutes to ensure the bark fully rehydrates. After soaking, make sure you let it drain completely before you return it to its spot. Always observe your orchid's roots. Plump green roots indicate hydration, while silvery or shriveled roots mean they're thirsty. Regarding fertilizer, orchids are not heavy feeders. They benefit from light fertilization, but it's important not to overdo it, as too much can actually prevent them from flowering. A balanced fertilizer, something like a 20-20-20 or 10-10-10, is usually recommended. However, it is crucial that you dilute it to 1/4 strength or even less before applying. When your orchid is actively growing, you can fertilize it every 3rd or 4th watering, which is about once or twice a month. Try to avoid high nitrogen fertilizers, as they encourage leafy growth at the expense of those beautiful flowers. Also, make sure to flush the potting mix with plain water monthly so that you prevent any salt buildup from the fertilizer. If your orchid is happy and healthy, you might eventually find yourself wanting to make more. The easiest and most common way to propagate many orchids is through division. This involves gently separating new growth or pseudobulbs from the parent plant, usually in the spring, making sure that each new division has roots. While it's fascinating, trying to grow orchids from seed is a much more complex and challenging endeavor, typically reserved for experienced growers and commercial nurseries due to the very specific sterile conditions required. For the home grower, really skip the seeds. Division is your best bet. Even with the best care, you might encounter a few hiccups. Here are some common problems people run into with orchids and how to address them. First, yellowing leaves. This can be a sign of too much direct light, especially if they look scorched or sometimes underwatering. Adjust your light conditions first, or check the moisture level of your potting mix. Wrinkled leaves or pseudobulbs. This is often a sign of underwatering or sometimes root rot, where the roots can't absorb water. Check the roots. If they're plump, water more frequently. If they're mushy, you might have root rot. Speaking of, mushy black roots. This is classic root rot, usually caused by overwatering or a potting mix that retains too much moisture. You'll need to unpot the plant, trim away any dead, mushy roots with sterilized shears, and repot it in a fresh, dry orchid mix. Ensure better drainage and airflow after this. Lack of blooms. If your orchid isn't flowering, the most common culprits are insufficient light or not enough temperature difference between day and night. Review your light conditions and ensure your orchid is getting that crucial 10 to 15 degree Fahrenheit temperature drop overnight. Over-fertilizing with too much nitrogen can also lead to lush foliage but no flowers. As for pests, orchids can occasionally get pests like mealybugs, scale, or spider mites. Inspect your plants regularly. For minor infestations, a cotton swab dipped in rubbing alcohol can effectively remove pests, but for more severe cases, horticultural oil or insecticidal soap can be used according to the specific product instructions. Also, good air circulation helps deter pests. And there you have it, a comprehensive guide for caring for orchids. With a little patience and attention to their specific needs, you'll be enjoying their stunning blooms for years to come. Remember to check your plant often and adjust your care as needed because every home environment is unique. Thanks for watching, and if you haven't checked out my History of Plants episode covering the history of orchids, check it out by clicking this box. Until next time, greenies, stay curious and don't forget to flourish.